I was working on getting the front end back on and trying to get the radiator support to fit down in there. And I came to a conclusion that I had to cut the mounts off and slide them backwards, because apparently everything's shoved back further than it's supposed to be. Slid the cab as far back as I could, and the fenders were too far forward. And the radiator support was about as far off as that scratch line there. It needed to be cut back in that to make it right, so I just decided to cut them off and move them back. So I slid it back about that far, around an inch. Everything's about an inch further back than I guess any other S-10 would be. Of course, I had to do both sides, but and I was looking at someone else's S-10 just to kind of compare where everything lines up. You can see on here how far the balancer is away from the sway bar, and on his the balancer is more up here, which is probably about an inch, inch and a half. So my engine's about an inch, inch and a half further back, which should help with some weight transfer. It's created some other problems. And one of the easiest way to tell it was wrong was I'd stick this on there, and the radiator support was not the way it is right now, but it's right. This was off about by that far. So the radiator support would have been back here, and you couldn't even put the bolt in the hole. Anyways, took care of that. So need to finish welding this. Already welded the fronts and the backs. Need to do the top. And hopefully I can get the radiator support back in. Get everything lined up, and then work on getting the radiator to fit. Yeah, the bouncer's welded on for good now. We'll let that cool and get that back on there. It's time for radiator fitment. So I believe I'm going to have to cut on it to get it to sit where I want to. I have to cut it down inside there. Cut it up here. A butcher hack whacked on it to get the radiator to fit down in it where I want it. As far as the distance away from the pulley there. And I cut that whole piece out of the bottom because I need to push the radiator down, because when you get the radiator further forward it gets higher and it'll want to hit the hood. So I cut that bottom piece out, which is right here, and it was in there like that. My plan is to turn it completely around this way and get it to sit down in there lower. I need to get rid of this piece right here. It's all tack welded to it. It's kind of double layered down there, or it's kind of the way it's made. But that went up before. Actually, it wasn't that way, it was this way. That went up. My plan is to put it down like that. So I need to get that piece off. A bunch of spot welds. Need to grind the welds and remove that. And I can stick that piece down in there and tack weld it back in. It'll clear down to here. I know light down here to look at it. Look at this side. Instead of it being up here, it's going to be down there. We'll gain half, 3/4 of an inch. And this along here needs to be ground even. I didn't get it cut very straight, but it all needs to be about the same as this side, and it goes. Well, I was getting ready to put my headers on. I brought them in here, put on the truck. Got noticing I missed some spots. There's like a thin line of mist down each of the tubes. You see those tubes there, the other ones are fine. But I put some paint on them and hopefully they're dry and try to stick them on here. I got these copper gaskets I bought to put on there. Hopefully it'll work out good. It won't leak. Of course you got them on both sides. But let's get those on. I'm going to get back to working on the radiator support. Managed to get the headers bolted on both sides, hopefully permanently. There you can see those tabs I welded on where they bolt together because they're slip collectors. They'll slide off. You see they go around the frame on both sides. I think they're fitting pretty good. I see the driver's side up in there. Can't see a whole lot from the front here, but there's the passenger side. Comes down, goes around the tire, and goes underneath. Now I got the radiator support pretty decent. Got this bottom piece flipped around. You see I got this piece tack welded along here. Basically used all the metal that I cut out and just turned it around, flipped it around, and made it work. See, I missed welding a couple spots there, but I'm not completely done with this yet. You'll need to let it down and weld some pieces in up above where it's cut out, but at least the radiator's in there and it's looking pretty good and it's clearing the hood. So. There you can see a view of the headers from up above, kind of how they're routed and stuff. And they should have plenty of spark plug clearance. Just need to tidy up these wires, and some of them need to be shortened up. I shouldn't have any problems with them burning on the headers anywhere. If the wires are long enough, I could ride them down below too, but I don't know if they're that long. At least some of them, I can't do it with all of them. There's the driver's side. Might have showed this before, but they weren't painted at the time, so now you can see them painted black. You have plenty of clearance for plugs on this side too. See how the wires ain't routed where they need to be, they're just loosely laying on there. I think the headers turned out pretty good, and hopefully they work good. Shouldn't leak. Guess we'll find out in a while here. Now that's the truck down so you can get a better look at the radiator support. You can see we tack welded that piece in down there. Trimmed her up real good across the top here. Got clearance down in there. Need to put some, probably weld some pieces in there and probably across here to kind of box it in and stiffen it up. Definitely need something there, but got plenty of radiator cap clearance. Might need to finish boxing it in down below there too. Kind of down inside there. I need to make some pieces of metal down here to hold it so it doesn't slide in and out there, and figure out something up top here to hold it. Once I get that figured out, I should be able to just start putting hoses on and getting it where it's ready. It should be ready to run. Now working on getting the radiator to fit again. Pretty much got it figured out. Put the radiator in there. Did all the final welding on the radiator support too. Then you take the radiator out, get a little bit better look at that, but look down there, welded that tab right there. Right there to hold the radiator in at the bottom. Welded the tab on this side down in there. Get some light on the subject right there. And that side also. And welded these tabs up here. Hold the radiator in place. Now these bolts were the only bolts I had that were long enough to go in there. But They're not the ones I'm going to use. Let's go get some. Anyways, next thing to do is get the transmission cooler mounted up in there. Yeah, I was working on this some more. I got these tabs completely welded on down on the back side. And I got my fan on. I'm going to run a nice little flex fan on there. An 18-incher. It should work. It's shorter than the radiator is, so you don't have to worry about any weird stuff going on there, like chopping your fingers off. It's a hair long on the bottom, but might have to trim down in right here. Kind of loop it in a little bit. I mean, it clears, but it's pretty close. If you look down in there, you see she's pretty close down in there. Maybe a 17 would be better, I don't know, but I don't have a 17. I got a 19, I know that's going to be too big. It'll probably start sticking up above here. Also, I had to go hunt my spacers. Find the right ones. That's a 2 1/4 inch spacer. Gives it enough room in between the radiator and the fan blades, about a finger's width. That should be good. And I pretty much figured out the tranny cooler. I was going to stick it this way. There's not much room in there, and I don't really care to put those deals through the radiator. They will eventually, usually they'll fall down and start rubbing holes in your cores. I'm just going to mount it here, point it straight down. The tranny lines are going to come out right underneath here. So that should work out pretty good. Since all that's figured out, next thing you need to do is take all this back apart, take the radiator support out, and put some paint on the spots that I cut out and welded back up so it don't rust. I like to sandblast it and paint it, but I don't have time to do that right now. I'll go racing this year. There's only 3 races left. There was 4, but they're not racing this weekend for some reason. I guess the weather's going to be too nice. Hopefully I can make it to the track. I've been putting in a lot of work on this thing not to be able to go race it. See what it runs. I don't know, it's getting late in the year. They might cancel because it gets too cold too, so hopefully they don't. Only get the windshield in, but I did get a windshield the other day. So I got a brand new windshield to put in it. Waiting on the trim that goes around here to show up. Ordered that. Hopefully it'll be here sometime this week and get the windshield in. Got all this finished. Go hunt some radiator hoses. Get those hooked up. Get the tranny lines on and try to get the splash pans back in the inner fender wells. And people call them different things. I always call them splash pans, and people look at you weird when you say that. I'm going to have to trim them for the header tubes. And just finish hooking up some odds and ends and get all the front end bolts back on. Get the grill, which it should be no problem to stick back in. It's right there. Front bumper, I might have to cut these mounts. Since I had to cut these mounts and move them back, I'm guessing the bumper's going to be hanging out too far. So they're just welded on here. Cut that, move it back, and weld it back on where I want it. And I need to find a headlight. That one might work, but it's probably not going to last too long, and cops might not like it. Don't need to get pulled over. Well, I had one more thing I had to finish before I considered this finished, besides having paint on it. I had to reposition the hood prop. It was up here, now it's down there. And obviously you can't stick it there. When it would lay across the top of the radio, that would be no good. So I just got right down along there, stick that little plastic holder there, it holds it good. And now I got a prop rod again instead of using the board. Shoving that board up in there to hold it. But I'm calling it quits for the day. It's way late. Tomorrow's project is to take all that back out and put some paint on the spots where it's been welded and ground on. Been working on the S-10, finishing up some stuff on it, getting it closer to being able to go for a drive and getting it running. I got the wires hooked up to the fuel sender in the fuel cell. Also got a tail light loom back here, but need to hook this ground wire up still. You got the loom run all down the side of the frame. I had to go to the junkyard and grab some of these clips so I could mount it up there without it flopping all over the place. It's really tight up in there because it runs by the headers up in there. I had to stick that heat reflective stuff around it so it doesn't melt. Up front here, you can see I got the radiator support painted where it was bare, and I got the wire loom run through there for the park lights and turn signals. Also in the junkyard, got me a new headlight. A new one for me, it's not new. You also see I got the splash panels in, trimmed out around for the headers. Of course, did that on both sides. This turned out pretty decent for me just starting to cut and hold it up there. It looked pretty good. There's some other stuff too. I need to let it down here so I can show you what all's been accomplished underneath the hood and all that other good stuff. Alright, got the S-10 down lower so you can look at it. You can see a painted radiator support where it was bare before. Got the radiator permanently mounted in there. Get this little rubber strip mounted back on there too. And got radiator hoses, upper and lower. Yeah, that bottom radiator hose was off of like a 75 Nova, or for a 75 Nova. This upper hose is for a G body. See, I got the fuel line ran up to the carb. Also got plug wires on, some MSD 8.5mm superconductor spark plug wire that I got at the junkyard. Not recently, I've had those a long time. It's getting where you can't barely find a small block Chevy in the junkyard anymore. They're all LS engines. Also got the battery mounted, got the 3/8 ready rod to hold the battery down, which you gotta have if you want to go racing. And you can see the splash pans are in, header clearance, got the temperature gauge hooked up. What else? Not a whole lot else, but yes, the overflow tank's hooked up, which is a pain in the ass because this radiator neck is smaller. This is off a Ford. Compliments of the junkyard. Had to buy a little adapter to adapt it back to the Chevy size hose because it's bigger. So that's all hooked up. Overflow. Also got the windshield washer tank hooked up. I can't think of anything else under here. That's about it for now. I got some more stuff to do, but I'll show that when I get there. I need to install the windshield, maybe today or tomorrow. I did get my stripping or molding trim for the windshield. That's where I got it from, and this tiny package came in a big ass box for some reason. I managed to get the transmission cooler mounted on the front and the lines hooked up. And of course the lines ran all the way back to the transmission, which is up in there. It's kind of hard to see. Got the special fittings which help out a lot on these, give them pointing more to like a 45-degree angle instead of straight out. Other than that, you about everything done on the front. Next thing is the rear axle and drive shaft. Got an Astrovan drive shaft I'm hoping will work. Probably should go grab it.
Maybe put that yoke on or a different yoke I have, I don't know. And then we need to set the pinion angle on the rear end. Hopefully, we can start her up here pretty soon. Maybe I could go for a drive.